Startups episode. Thanks for everybody for joining us. I'm excited to introduce our guest, the Urban Chamber, through these times.
I'd be glad to. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you, Elias, to you, Ella, Sophia, as well as the others that are here in the studio, as well as those of you that are out there in the virtual live stream land. A pleasure to be here. Always willing to share whatever I can. I'll share both the good as well as some of the more challenging things I went through. My thought is, if there's a way for me to share something with you to make you more effective and efficient in terms of achieving success as an entrepreneur, that's what we're all about at the Urban Chamber. We tell people that we're not saying that you can't make the entrepreneurial journey by yourself, but if there's a way for you to make the journey with us. Actually started by watching my mother. My mother raised 3 boys. I have a twin brother. When we were in Los Angeles, one of the things I used to notice is that she always had a quote-unquote side gig, and many times it related to Afrocentric products or items, whether it was calendars, whether it was flashcards. The way I learned a lot of my own culture and Black history was through some of the products that she was involved in while I was in elementary school. So I always kept that in mind. The other thing she did is, I don't know if you remember the blank postcards that they sometimes sell. Both sides are blank and you can write on them or draw on them. What I did when I was very young in elementary school is I used to draw birds, or they have Time Life encyclopedias. So I used to draw the birds, the animals, basically create my own postcard. And then I didn't realize it then, but what my mother would do is she'd encourage her friends to buy the postcards from me. So once again, planting those seeds for being an entrepreneur. Fast forward years later, I made the decision to go out on my own in the early 2000s. And I'm going to say, first and foremost, take advantage of the resources that are out there, like the Nevada Small Business Development Center, take advantage of SCORE, take advantage of talking to other people that have already been there. And I'm glad I did all of those things, because what it enabled me to do is to fast track my start as an entrepreneur. The other thing that Elias and I were talking about is, to the extent possible, be as financially stable as you can be. For example, one of the benefits I had is I bought a condominium. Elias mentioned the fact that I'm a retired veteran. So one of the things I was able to do is leverage my VA loan to buy a condo when I first moved to Las Vegas. And then I refinanced from a 30 to a 15 year, which meant that I was accruing equity faster than normal. So what did that mean? When it came time for me to start my business, I literally sold my condo to a friendly buyer, was able to still rent it, but I got access to all the equity that I had accrued over the years. So in addition to that, I also had some savings and some investments. So that enabled me to live off my investments and savings. Although one of the lessons I had to learn is, if you're going to be a full-time entrepreneur, try to figure out a way to factor in a salary for yourself so that you're not just draining your investments and your savings portfolio. So again, learning lessons along the way. So I think the point I want to make there is, again, to the extent possible, be as financially stable as possible before you make that entrepreneurial leap. Because one of the challenges you'll run into, and I ran into it as well, is trying to get capital for your business. And it doesn't matter what kind of business you have, you're going to run into challenges getting capital. And if you're able to, especially within the first 2 or 3 years, at least seed your idea, product, or service with your own capital, that'll help you out even as you're trying to convince other people to give you capital. So those are just a couple of things that I went through to get started, and there may be other questions you have as we make our way through it.
Yeah, most definitely. I really appreciate that background, and I want to dig deeper into it. I'll yield the floor here in a second, but I've got a curveball. The curveball is, Kev, you want to switch seats with me so that way there's guests that we have live in the audience right now, they can face you.
Absolutely. I'd be more than happy to do that.
Cool.
Old switcheroo.
I know.
Oh no, is my headphones up on there?
Is it this one?
No, I can't hear the mic. Or anyone's calling my headphones. Oh, there it is.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. I've raised everybody's up a little bit.
Yes.
All right, cool. All right, let's just resume.
Yeah, this works. Hey, because yeah, you saw me. I'm always big about audience, so I'm trying to engage you, engage the cameras, and then try to peek over my shoulder. But this is a lot
This one you
easier
face
way to
there
do it.
and there.
That's right.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'll just keep the conversation going. Ken, I mean, the reason why I brought that up is because I feel like entrepreneurship has been really glamorized over the last decade or so, and it's exciting. It's exciting to say I want to quit my job to go have a job that's not 9 to 5, that's not one boss, right? People complain about, like, I want to quit my job and I want to go become an entrepreneur, not knowing that an entrepreneur, you probably work a lot more and you have a whole ton of stakeholders, not just your, if you have investors, God bless you. If you have tons of customers, and eventually, God bless you, if you have employees to take care of and their families to ultimately take care of. And so,
What they suggested is, especially if you have a family, do you have the ability to stop working and generate enough money to pay yourself a salary plus be able to pay for health benefits? Because here's the key, and I can tell you from personal experience, my credit score did a deep dive when I first became an entrepreneur because I did do the cold turkey, leap of faith thing. But at the same time, like I mentioned, I did have. I'm not going to say I depleted all my business plan because I'm going to suggest many times entrepreneurs they don't want to be quote unquote bothered doing a business plan. From my standpoint, at a minimum, you should put enough things down in writing and on paper. Excel is my tool of choice, but put enough information down in paper so you can see if I charge $50 an hour, is that going to be enough to pay me a salary, pay for the infrastructure of my company, plus pay for some other profit, if you will. I'll give you a story right there. I'll never forget when I ran the numbers. I did consulting as real estate development consulting. So when I was getting started, I'm thinking to myself, well, when I was working for somebody else, I was making about $22 an hour. So if somebody's going to pay me $35 an hour, that should be pretty decent. Wrong. When I actually looked at the cost of infrastructure, and thank goodness again, the value of talking to people that have done it before, the individual said, that's not enough money. So thank goodness I talked to him. So instead of charging $35 an hour, I was charging $85 to $125 an hour. Now, when you talk to people that work for other companies, they're going to say, man, that's too much money or that's crazy. But they haven't factored in, again, the cost to pay yourself a salary, the infrastructure to have a company, let alone, last but not least, to generate a profit. So that's one nugget. The other, as far as jumping out there and taking a leap of faith, I had a friend of mine, I'm a civil engineer, well, I had a friend of mine that's a licensed mechanical engineer, and here's what he literally did. He worked long enough where he was at part-time in the evenings, and eventually he would do an 8-hour shift at his regular job, and then he'd do another 8 to 10 hours in the evening. And when he got to a point where he was making so much money part-time in the evening,
oh, I'm an entrepreneur now, I can just quit my job tomorrow. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. Obviously, we're going to have to put some work into it and,
Absolutely. I want to tell the story, and since it's been on Channel 8, you may even be able to find it on YouTube. One of my chamber into having my company, which brought on a set of take the equity out and fuse that. No, when you add the burden, or again, the infrastructure, you have to pay for licenses. If you're like myself, you may have to pay to rent a building. Now all of a sudden, you have to think like a business owner or beyond that as an entrepreneur. So mindset is something that can kill a business. Another thing that hurt or starters could all like-minded, because nothing will kill your motivation faster than anything else than having Basically, all you've done is created a job for yourself. Now, I'm not knocking that. Don't get me wrong. Early stage, you may need to do that. But I like the fact that you begin with the end in mind, as I like to say, because you understand, in order to really grow your business, you've got to be in a position where you can work on your business, to replace yourself or bring other people on board.
Absolutely. And then on the element of bringing people on board, I want to go deeper into that. So one of the concepts I was introduced to earlier this year was an employee stock options plan. Essentially is a way to compensate your staff. It could be in addition to whatever you pay them. But what I really loved about the stock options plan, as opposed to only salary or as opposed to equity, is that stock options don't go into effect until a certain amount of time has been committed at the company. And the reason why I really like that versus equity is because you have to have a lot of trust with the folks that you end up splitting equity with. And that's great if you can have that trust, but if the trust isn't completely there yet, you might find yourself really frustrated if down the road this person you gave 30% equity to isn't pulling their weight. But stock options give you so much more flexibility for being able to mediate against that.
Absolutely. It's like a trial period to see how things are going to go. The other thing I think about is the more you can give a person an incentive to contribute to the company and help the company grow, that's a good reason to use something like that.
Love it. Sophia, do you have any questions?
I always like to ask the question, what are some of your most formative, favorite, positive mistakes that you've made, positively impactful mistakes that you've made that you'd like to share?
I would say from my standpoint, first and foremost is the mistake I almost made was underpricing my company. And I want to talk about that for a minute. One of the things that floats around social media is people complaining about people's prices. And the mistake I almost made is, like I said, undercharging. I was getting ready to charge a fairly big client only maybe $50 an hour. And then when I met with the client, what they told me is, well, if you submitted a proposal for $50 an hour, first of all, we would have known it's too low. Second of all, we would have questioned your value as a consultant. So needless to say, after talking to them, I got up to the 85 to 125. But that would have been a crucial mistake because I would have worked my butt off and been miserable because I wouldn't have been able to sustain the company. So that was a positive mistake that I was able to avoid in the 11th hour. The other positive mistake that I've seen others make is trying to go after every client possible instead of saying, you know what, this is my niche. And the other part of it is some people just can't afford me. I'll give you an example. I was dead broke as an entrepreneur and turned down a client that I knew could pay. But here's the key. I knew it was going to be a difficult client. And I even had someone that was more experienced tell me, you're making the good decision to leave that alone. And again, I'm pointing out to you, I was broke as an entrepreneur, which in turn meant I was struggling personally as well. But I'm glad I didn't make the positive mistake of taking that client on because, again, I would have put a disproportionate amount of resources into it. And then the other thing I want to come back to again is don't let your family and friends or even associates cheapen your product or your service. You charge what you charge. If you've taken the time to do your market research to figure out what it really costs you, meaning your unit cost, if it's a product or your billable rate, if you're a consultant or a professional service, that's what you need to charge. And what you will figure out, even though it's scary, is some people are going to fall by the wayside, but you need to do that to avoid having the positive mistakes that you're talking about.
That's such good advice. I remember somebody put it as, be careful to not throw pearls before swine. Like,
yes,
that's one of the best ways somebody put it, is like your services, and there's a point where sometimes you keep trying to push and try to get them to understand your value and keep pushing, and there's a point where you just realize, okay, gotta walk away, this isn't my client, and they don't understand my value, and there's somebody else that will, so refocus your efforts.
Absolutely, and I'm going to share something, it's okay because it's semi-public with the chamber. We went through the same thing. When I first got there, we were charging a certain amount, but I noticed how hard my staff was working and candidly, working themselves to the bone because at that time we had half the staff we had now. So they were really busting their butts, but we weren't making headway past a certain point. Well, we made the decision to raise the rates, and naturally you always try to socialize it a bit, but past a certain point, you said don't take time bothering to throw pearls before swine. Well, we tried to socialize it, but here's what we came to realize. We raised the rates, and yes, there was some drop off, but then over the course of time, because we focused on return on investment and the value add we provided, we ended up getting even more clients at the same rate, but even initially, we kept enough clients at the increased rate that it balanced out those that we dropped.
It goes back to knowing your value and what you can provide.
Absolutely.
And just standing up for yourself, really, and understand you might be in for a hard time, or like you said, some people might fall off, and there's that kind of gray area, but to understand that too shall pass, and that soon you'll leave room and space and bandwidth to take on the clients, and the clients will find you, right?
Absolutely. If you're providing a value add and a return on investment, the clients will find you. One thing I want to add to that is don't get discouraged if family and friends don't support your business, because candidly, they may not be your client base. If that's where sometimes let business be business. If they wouldn't naturally and normally, or as I like to say, spiritually and organically fit into your customer base or your customer profile, and everybody should do what they call market segmentation, feasibility. Here's the thing, an MBA, I don't always talk about some of the terms as far as business models, market segmentation, and some of the other concepts. So where I'm going with this is, if your friends and family would not normally fit into your customer base, stop tripping off the fact that they want support.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And one other thing I want to add to that too is, we live in the age of the internet. So you can surround yourself very easily with Facebook groups, with podcasts, YouTube channels, just like this one, where you can connect and just listen to the stories of other entrepreneurs and the challenges that they go through, because it is a different mindset. If everybody in your family is, 9-to-5 corporate lifestyle for life, or generational military, or whatever the case may be, it might not be the place you're going to get all your support. Off the wall, crazy startup idea that's not going to make you any money for the first 3 years. Like, no way Bob's going to support that right off the bat. So go out there and find your voices of support.
And I like that you're bringing that up, Elias, because I want people to recognize the fact that if you really study entrepreneurs, what you'll see is that they may try 3 to 5 different things and one of them hits. Or maybe one of them hits halfway and then they have one that hits really, really well. But again, study entrepreneurs, study business owners, but definitely study entrepreneurs and look at their journey and what they go through, and that can be a source of support as well.
I like that you brought that up, because we do have a lot of entrepreneurs who have like 5 amazing ideas, and they're like, which one do I go with? They're all amazing.
I have a response for that. I remember when I first was introducing myself, I was talking about being efficient and effective, and that at the Urban Chamber, we want to help you be as efficient and effective as possible. Again, look at the business model for the product. It's kind of like we say in construction, measure twice, cut once. So the point I'm making is, take the time to do, even if you don't do a full-blown or something, but do some financial projections to figure out, okay, out of these 5 ideas, which one will most efficiently help me make some money? Where am I going with that? Mark Cuban. Okay, just about every single hand goes. Actually, all hands are, and hopefully out there in the virtual land as well. Here's what Mark Cuban did. He did something really, really well as an entrepreneur, sold it, turned into a billionaire, and now he's doing 3, 4, 5 things, as well as investing in things on a smaller basis. So the point I'm making is, we can all do the same thing. Examine all 3 to 5 ideas, see which one will make you money efficiently and effectively, let that be your base, and you may start out in one direction doing something because it's more efficient and effective, but then end up making enough money that you can do what it is you ultimately have your passion to do. but you'll be in a better position to do it because you're more financially stable. So that's my ideas and thoughts on having 3 to 5 ideas, but you do need to focus.
I love that.
I love that as well. Focus is definitely key. What I'd love to do next is open it out to audience for anybody who's got questions. So maybe start thinking about it. And what will happen is you can just stay in your spot if you have a question. And Ken, if you could just repeat the question for the mic,
Absolutely.
that'd be much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I got a question. So, when you're starting up, when is the perfect time to start getting people, like, do you give stock options right away, or do you wait for a year to grow your income, your capital? And
Okay, the question was, if you're starting up a business, when is the best time to give stock options or have people buy into the company?
Yeah.
I'm going to answer it by saying it depends. Okay, and here's where I'm going with that. I had a couple of situations where everybody was on the same playing field and we wanted to invest in real estate. So literally I raised some money through phone calls, and every person essentially was a partner, had equal shares and equal interest in the company. So that's one scenario. On the other hand, if you have somebody that is strong financially but maybe not as technically sound, but they still want to support your idea, well, maybe you structure things such that they're a passive investor, and in exchange for their capital, you give them stock certificates or stock in your company from the start. So the bottom line, what I'm suggesting is it depends on the situation, where you are, how much capital you need, the type of capital you need. Can they afford to be patient? Because that's another thing too, is I learned the lesson by being in an investment group one time. There was another partner involved, and I know this person, they were financially okay, but they stressed over losing a few $100s. So part of it too is figuring out the risk tolerance, but beyond that, the way people react in business environment. Because sometimes it can be different even amongst family and friends. So again, my answer to that is it depends on where you are, where the company is, and what you're trying to accomplish as far as raising capital.
Thank you, Ken. Does anybody else have a question?
Yeah, I have one. So, like, what are some resources that you have for entrepreneurs as far as, like, books or podcasts or, different things like that to kind of be tuning in for?
Great. Question was, what are some of the resources that we have and I have for people that are getting started, whether it's books, whether it's other resources or social media? And I'm going to try to hit a couple in all layers. Let's start with books. One of the things I did when I wanted to become an entrepreneur is I think there's a book called The E-Book. In addition to that, there's another book by Jim Clifton, I think it is, called Good to Great. And then I think he's had a subsequent book to that. But one of the best things that happened for me is I read the book Good to Great and tried to live by and develop and form my company based on some of the tenets. Like, let me tell you, the quick tenet I want to share with you is get the right people on the bus. They mentioned I'm retired military. I'm a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. I've been a commander in several different environments, Iraq, Afghanistan, as well as stateside. And I even follow that tenet in the military. The most important thing is the team you surround yourself with. That's in general and definitely in terms of your management team. So Jim Clifton's book, Good to Great, talks about get the right people on the bus. So those are a couple of book titles, and there are obviously more. Let's talk about social media. 2 individuals that I'd recommend you follow if you don't already. His name is Mahdi Woodard, Mahdi Woodard. He's on Instagram, and he says, I won't use the bad language part of it, but it's part of how he gets your attention. But what he basically states is, my name is Mahdi Woodard. I care about you being successful, and that's why I'm here. And he says it a little stronger than that, but the point is, he's on Instagram, and if you're not already following him, he's good to follow. And then there's also a young sister named Kezia Williams, or Professor Kez, Keziaw, I think it is, but she also goes by Professor Kez. But I follow those 2 on Instagram, and I think she may have a Facebook presence, but I know, looking at the demographic, most of us are in the gram, as the young folks say. See, I try to be a little hip. I just had my 58th birthday, but like I was telling people, I like hanging around y'all because y'all keep me young. Okay, so those are 2 social media. And then the last one, as far as resources that we have through our resource network at the Urban Chamber, again, I'm not saying you can't do it by yourself, but here's some free, I repeat, free resources for you to get started with. The Nevada Small Business Development Center, or NSBDC, and then SCORE, SCORE is the acronym. They have business counselors and advisors that you can go see. You can talk to them about your business plan, your financial projections, or your marketing plan. And the other thing about NSBDC, or the Nevada Small Business Development Center, they have a 45 to 50 question assessment questionnaire that you can take. And I recommend you do that because, back to the point we talked about, Ella, you want to work on your mindset. Doing that assessment will help you to do that. So there are many resources. It makes no sense to leap out there without doing some homework ahead of time. Let me give you a quick benefit personal experience. I am so glad that I went to small development center when I was forming my company. I remember her name to this day, Janet Stevenson. She helped me not only get organized, but in addition to that, she helped me get a micro loan for $5,000. And that may not seem like much, but I want to tell you 2 tenets. Number 1, borrow money when you don't need it, because that's when the banks, unfortunately, will lend it to you. That's a whole nother subject for another day. But the other part of it is being organized and tapping into her knowledge and expertise. Again, I'll use those 2 E words again, made me a more effective and efficient entrepreneur and startup from the gate.
Oh yeah.
I love that. I want to just throw in a follow-up question to that, Ken, just since we're talking about resources. Can you talk about the benefits of a membership with the Urban Chamber and how folks can leverage that for their business?
Absolutely. First and foremost, it gets you connected to a network of individuals that are like-minded, going through the same struggle, same challenges that you are. So first and foremost, it's a very good support group at the Urban Chamber. In addition to that, what we tell people is that we advocate, we educate, and we position people for procurement. So beyond the initial startup stage, if you're looking to expand your business, we make an effort to connect you to corporate contacts, to corporate entities, both public and private, to expand your business profile and ultimately to get you larger contracts. I'll tell you a quick story. One of our Green Tie Awards or GTA award winners this year is G3 Electrical. They're an electrical subcontractor. Taisha Moore is Taisha and Thomas Moore, husband and wife, family owned. But Taisha Moore came to a coffee and commerce where I talked about people getting to the $1 million point and creating $1 million companies. That stuck with her. I'm happy to say several years later, through hard work, perseverance on their point, they are what we call an organic corporation. They literally grew a company, and I can remember when they maybe had 2 or 4 people on staff. Now they have a few dozen, and they're north of $1 million as a company, so it is possible. That's a benefit of coming to the Urban Chamber, is getting access to events like that and support groups like that to grow your business as efficiently and effectively as possible. Let me conclude by saying we have an Urban Chamber Business Success Center. So we have our own building, which is a business incubator, but then we have a resource network with the partners that I mentioned. But again, you don't have to be an Urban Chamber member to access our resource network. But if you want to take things to the next level, it's a good idea to join. But at a minimum, we don't want to turn anyone away. If you're interested in being an entrepreneur or business owner, come take advantage of the resources.
How would someone sign up to become a member? Like, what would be the first step? Is there like an online registration, or do they have to go in person?
Here's what I'll say. You can come by the chamber in person, but we recommend you can do it online. urbanchamber.org. So that's urbanchamber.org, and you can sign up online. That's probably the easiest, most efficient way to do it. You can pay online. And let me say this, as a startup, one of the things we did is I talked about the fact that we increased the level of the membership, but then a year or 2 later, we also established an installment plan. I'll tell you up front, 2 things. Number 1, there are some companies, I kid you not, and if some of my board members are listening, they may cringe when I say this, but literally, we've told some people it's too early for you to join the chamber. On the other hand, For other companies that it may not be too early, but we still understand that they're trying to establish themselves, we recommend that they do the installment plan. And so that's an option that we have as well.
Can you briefly, in a nutshell, go over what are some of the qualifiers and non-qualifiers for being a member of the Urban?
From a standpoint of qualifiers, what we're looking for is, are you in business? Meaning, do you have your business licenses in order? Have you filed with the IRS? Are you a bona fide business and in a position to conduct business? And let me say this too. I don't mean any harm or offense, but I get the feeling this is a keep it real environment, so I'm going to keep it real.
100.
Yeah. So keeping it 100, if you're not getting your licenses in order, if you're not filing appropriate paperwork, have a bootleg business or a hobby on steroids. Now, here's what I'll say. I can understand starting there, but past a certain point, if you want to take advantage of and have people give you better quality opportunities, you need to have your stuff together. As Commissioner Weekly likes to say, you know, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. Well, that's where I'm coming from. I'm going to, 2 quick stories on those lines. There's nothing worse, like for example, Miles Bunch, correct? Here in the studio has a vegan product. And here's what I look at. Let's say that I wanted to take that and introduce that to MGM. Well, if they start asking you, hey, we want you to register with our vendor supplier registration, we're going to need your business license, we're going to need to know that you filed taxes within the past year or two, and you're like, well, I as soon as you start yammering and stammering, as we say, you could have. When we see the Urban Chamber of Commerce, you do not get a second chance to make a first impression. Let me repeat that again. You do not get a second chance to make a first impression. So make sure you have things in order. The other thing that I want to say is that as far as having your paperwork in order is when EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, as well as the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, came into being, we as a chamber, and this is one of the values of being part of our chamber, we fought to get those funds to go to communities of color across the country and definitely within our own region, because we were part of a localized effort as well as a national effort. Well, they carved out $60 billion after a while of those funds to come to businesses for Black and brown individuals. But I had a couple of conversations where I talked to people, and unfortunately, they could not take advantage of that hard work and advocacy that we did because of how they'd done 2 things. 1, structured themselves, and 2, filed their taxes. Because depending on how you'd done that, you couldn't access PPP funds, and in some cases, it was more challenging to get the EIDL funds. So begin with the end in mind. Sometimes we think we're getting over in the short run, but don't do that to yourself. From my perspective, you're better off making the short-term sacrifice, file the paperwork, file the taxes, do what you're supposed to. And I'm going to sit up and tell you, I've had my own challenges with businesses that I had by myself, as well as with partners. So I'm not trying to be a saint about this, but if you want me to keep it real in 100, as Jeremy Washington, Mr. Glenn Jeremy says, I can either tell you a way or I can tell you the right way. And I just going to tell you the right way.
Yeah, we appreciate the right way, so that way we can all make the right moves. Just to kind of go back to that grant money that was being distributed, or not grant money, but the PPP funds, the big difference, was that difference really sole proprietorship versus at minimum having an LLC, and then the way that the taxes get filed for that?
That was part of it initially. With the Paycheck Protection Program, essentially what that was is a great opportunity. And again, I'm going to bring up the name Mark Cuban. If Mark Cuban says publicly, this is one of the best things since sliced bread, and he did publicly, I'm like, man, we better be all over that, especially as smaller, diverse companies. But to that end, initially, if you did not have employees, you could not take advantage of that program. But once again, through our advocacy and other individuals' advocacies, as an independent contractor, meaning if you were within the beauty industry, as an esthetician, as a barber, as a beautician, you could eventually take advantage of it, but even then, it depended on how you filed your taxes. You know, I talked to an individual that was in the real estate industry, and again, because they didn't file, I think it's a Schedule C, and there's a block on there where you can still show a salary, even though you're an independent contractor, the person couldn't take advantage of the PPP funds. And, you know, fortunately, the person had integrity and wasn't going to go back and try to amend their taxes. And I'm not here trying to give tax advice, but I know enough to plant some seeds about certain things you should or should not consider doing. But, you know, it hurt my heart that this individual made a considerable amount of money, but because of how they filed their taxes, in order to avoid taxes, they couldn't take advantage of something when they knew they were hurting or could have used the help.
Yeah, for sure. And it's only a couple $100 in the state of Nevada to get the right license. So let's throw it back to the audience in the studio. Anybody else want to come in with questions?
Oh yeah, I have another question. Okay, so talking about pricing, you were talking about price. Is it good to have a higher price or medium price, or stay in a price where you can make it affordable to a client, you know, depending on what they want? What's better advice? Because something that I've been trying to work on myself with that. Is it better to have a higher price, a medium price, and what's going to be better for a long term and a short term?
Okay, the question was, in terms of doing pricing for your product or service, you can either go low, mid, or high range, and what's the best strategy?
Yeah.
And again, forgive me, I'm going to say it depends, but I'm going to give you some scenarios to consider. Keep in mind that if you deal, and this is especially true for family and friends, but it applies to your general market. What I would suggest is this: wherever you start with people, keep in mind that you will only be able to bump that rate up, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10% a year or whatever your industry standard is. So maybe the first thing I would start with is do some market research. You can go to a library, you can go to the Nevada Small Business Development Center. They have people on staff that can help you do some market research. And what I mean by that is they'll say, what industry are you in? What's your product or service? And then they will help give you an idea of what the market is. And in some cases, they may even be able to give you an idea of what your pricing structure could look like. So that's number one. Number two, what I'm also suggesting is don't price too low, because if you stay in the same clientele, again, they're only going to be able to tolerate maybe a 5 to 10% bump. At a minimum 3% if you factor in, that's usually the cost of living amount. That's all you're going to be at. So begin with the end in mind, and that's the reason why you want to do the projections. So for me, the good thing about starting with an $85 an hour rate for my consultant company is it was ample. If Summerlin or downtown Summerlin, my pricing may be different than if I'm in other areas. So again, you want to do your research and base it on that, and pay attention to your clientele. The last thing is efficiency. Remember, I talked about the fact that after I've been at the chamber a couple of years, we literally almost doubled our membership rates, but we made money more efficiently, and eventually we made more money. So it's all about the journey that you want to make and the clientele you want to attract. You know, I think it's last thought that comes to mind is, have you ever seen a commercial for, I think it's BMWs and Mercedes-Benz? I mean, do you see a lot of commercials for them? Not really, because their clientele finds them.
I heard something similar. It's like they don't see a commercial for Porsche because millionaires aren't watching TV. But you know, to that point, any other questions from Ella or Sophia?
That's
I have
true,
so
though.
many more, but there's out of time. We just need to do a part 2, right?
Oh.
2.0.
We are.
Yeah. No.
Oh,
Ken,
wow.
Ken,
Okay.
we
Oh, the
really
time flew.
appreciate it.
Yeah, happy belated birthday.
Thank you very
Oh,
much.
Again,
happy
thank you
belated
for your
birthday.
service.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Belated birthday. Birthday was Halloween, and then Veterans Day, celebrated Veterans Day. And I want to say this, to the extent that I can share information and it be valuable and a good return on investment of your time, I welcome coming back, as well as, more importantly, if there are other individuals I can help connect you with to come in and do something similar. Because we have a ton of business owners and entrepreneurs at the Urban Chamber and beyond that have been through the journey that all of you are making. and a lot of them like to turn around and share what they've been through.
Thank you so much, Ken.
That's awesome. People learn a lot too from others who are going through the same struggle or same experience as well.
Absolutely, and I'm still learning too. Don't get me wrong. The last thing I want to share with you is I'm part of a startup that's called Community Development Financial Institution. It's called Access Community Capital. And the reason why we're forming this is because, one, we want to control capital, but two, we want to deploy that capital in communities of color that normally don't get access to capital within the first 2 to 3 years. So if you want to get some more information from me, I'll disclose I actually sit on the board for that. But there's other people that do the transactions and everything. But the reason why I'm saying that is because it's so frustrating. I saw Sophia nod her head when I was talking about getting access to capital within the first 2 to 3 years. You go to a traditional bank and they say, well, you need 2 or 3 years. And it's kind of like, well, wait a minute, I'm a startup. How am I going to get capital within the first 2 to 3 years? So again, the idea behind what we're doing is to get people capital within the first 2 to 3 years and go from there.
Awesome.
All right, well, that's a wrap for today. Ken, thank you again for joining us. Ella, Sophia, appreciate y'all. And
Thank you, Ken.
All right, thank you all very much.
cool.
Did I go over to?